What do you do when your need is massive, but your supply is small, when 5,000 mouths are waiting, and all you have is 5 loaves and 2 fish? What if the miracle you're hoping for is already in your hands, but it doesn't look like enough? This story isn't just about fish and bread. It's about your faith, your resources, your perspective, and how God takes what feels small and multiplies it beyond imagination. Welcome to Bible Adventure. Let's walk through John chapter 6, verse by verse, because what you're about to see is that when Jesus is involved, little is never too little. Verse 1. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. This moment wasn't random. It was a setup. Jesus crossed over, not just geographically, but spiritually. He was moving toward a divine appointment. There are times when your breakthrough begins with a quiet crossing, a transition, and though it may seem uneventful at first, what's on the other side of your obedience could change everything. Verse 2, and a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. People weren't following him for his teaching. They followed him for his power. They had seen miracles, the blind seeing, the crippled walking, the sick healed. And so they followed, not out of curiosity, but out of desperation. It's easy to judge the crowd, but how many of us are here because we've seen him work before? We keep coming back, not because we're religious, but because we know what it feels like to be touched by God. And when you've seen his hand once, you can't help but hope he'll do it again. Verse 3, and Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. This is a calm before the miracle. Before he multiplied the bread, Jesus withdrew. He sat, he watched, he waited. That's the Jesus we don't often preach about. The one who's not rushing, not reacting, but discerning. Sometimes the silence before your miracle is not God ignoring you, it's God positioning you. And it's in the stillness that you begin to see things from heaven's view. Verse 4, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. This little detail matters. The Passover wasn't just a religious holiday. It was a remembrance of how God provided for his people in the wilderness. Manna from heaven, water from a rock. And now, standing before them again, is the bread of life, ready to show that he is still the same God. God often performs the most profound miracles during seasons of remembrance, because he loves to remind you, I did it before, and I can do it again. Verse 5, when Jesus then lifted up his eyes, and saw a great company come unto him, he saith unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread, that these may eat? Here's where it begins. Jesus looks up and sees the need. He sees the hunger, the expectation, the pressure. And instead of rushing to fix it, he turns to Philip and asks a question. Not because he doesn't know the answer, but because he wants Philip to confront the impossibility so he can discover the supernatural. God will sometimes let you face a question that exposes your limits so he can reveal his limitless power. Verse 6, and this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Jesus wasn't asking Philip because he needed ideas. He already had the solution. But he asked the question to test Philip's faith. Sometimes God will ask you something that seems impossible, not to confuse you, but to reveal what's inside you. He already knows what he's going to do in your life. The question is, do you trust him before you see it? Before the miracle comes, God often allows a moment that stretches your belief. Verse 7, Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. Philip responded like most of us would, by calculating. He looked at the need, then looked at the money, and concluded, it's not enough. But that's the thing. Miracles don't begin with calculations. They begin with faith. When your eyes are on your budget, your inventory, your strength, you will always say, it's not enough. But when your eyes are on Jesus, You remember, he's not limited by math. He operates by multiplication. Verse 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him. Andrew speaks up. He doesn't bring an answer. He brings an observation. Faith doesn't always come with solutions. Sometimes it just starts by pointing out what's available. Andrew wasn't certain, but he was willing to speak up. Sometimes the first step to a miracle is being bold enough to say, I don't know how, Lord, but here's what I see. Verse 9, there is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, but what are they among so many? Here it is, the seed of the miracle. A child, 5 loaves, 2 fish, small, simple, insignificant, until surrendered. But notice Andrew's words. What are they among so many? Even he doubted. Even he underestimated what God could do with little. This is where many miss their moment. They see their resources, their gifting, their time, and think, what is this among so many? But what you call not enough, God calls the starting point. Because in the hands of Jesus, small becomes supernatural. Verse 10, and Jesus said, make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. Before the miracle, Jesus gave an instruction, make the people sit. Why? Because faith isn't frantic. When God is about to provide, he first brings order and stillness. You don't receive multiplication while standing in chaos. You receive it when you rest in expectation. 5,000 men sat down. That doesn't include women and children. The need was massive, but Jesus wasn't intimidated. He just needed everyone in position. Verse 11, and Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. He took the loaves, not a lot, just 5. And the first thing he did wasn't complain about how little it was. He gave thanks. That's the secret. Jesus blessed it before it multiplied. Gratitude always comes before overflow. And notice the process. Jesus gave to the disciples, and they gave to the people. He didn't feed the crowd directly. He used his followers. That's still how he works today. God wants to flow through you to feed others. And look at the last part, as much as they would. This wasn't a taste test. It wasn't rationed. It was all you can eat. When God provides, he doesn't skimp. He gives more than enough. Verse 12, when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Filled, not barely satisfied, not just enough. Filled. But even after the fullness, Jesus gives a command, gather the leftovers. Why? Because God doesn't waste miracles. The fragments may not seem important, but they're part of the testimony. Every crumb is proof that what started small became more than enough. Nothing is wasted in the kingdom. Not the pain, not the process, not the waiting. Even the fragments have purpose. Verse 13, therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. 12 baskets, one for each disciple, one for each doubter. He didn't just meet the need, he exceeded it. What started as not enough turned into overflow, and now the disciples each had to carry the proof of what they once questioned. Sometimes God will make you carry the evidence of your own unbelief, not to shame you, but to remind you, see what I can do when you give me your little. Verse 14, then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. The miracle led to a revelation. They weren't just fed, they were awakened. They didn't just see a man, they saw the Messiah. Their hunger led them to bread, but the bread led them to truth. That's the power of divine provision. It doesn't just fill your stomach, it opens your eyes. The blessing wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Maybe right now what you have feels like that boy's lunch, small, insufficient, laughable. But when you give it to Jesus, it becomes more than you ever imagined. God is not asking for what you don't have. He's asking for what you do have, because he already knows what he will do with it. Give it to him. Trust him. Watch him multiply it. And when the miracle comes, don't forget to gather the fragments, because the evidence of overflow will follow you.